Hey folks, welcome to the Generational Gap. I am Robert, your resident Gen Xer, and right over there is John, your resident Millennial. And then right there, over there, and right there. This is like the Brady Bunch. Let's do the Brady Bunch. Everybody point. Everybody. We have the Wild Ones on. We have Cam and Jessica from the Wild Ones. Hi guys, how are you?
Hi. We're actually the mad ones.
The Mad Ones.
Yeah,
Is it?
where
Why
did you get the wild ones from?
We're
you know
also
what?
wild.
I was.
It's true.
I'm not going to tell you why I was thinking that and why I did that. And my apologies. I'm a horrible person. Because I was thinking about the Wild
See, the
Hogs
thing is,
a
you guys
little
are not
while
important enough
ago.
for us to remember. That's all it is.
Have you ever seen the movie The Wild Hogs with Tim
Yeah,
Allen,
with,
Tim Allen, and
Oh yeah.
all of them, the old guys in the bikes? I was
the
thinking
Scientologist.
Right. I was.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was. Hey, it was actually not a horrible movie. I mean, unless you look at Rotten Tomatoes and they'll tell you. But anyway, how are you guys doing tonight?
Making it. Good.
Yeah.
Making it
Can't
like. Oh, you can't.
Life is a stressful thing.
Right.
So I've got the whiskey, and it's about to get better. That's
Awesome.
I thought you meant
Been
maybe.
before.
I thought maybe you meant making it like you're just printing your own money.
man.
Everybody else is doing it. Why not? Right?
There's lots of things you can print on your own for yourself. Lots
Right.
of
I
things.
do have a 3D printer, but unfortunately, it doesn't have any gold in it. So
So what is the most unusual / outrageous thing that you've created with your 3D printer?
oh goodness.
Wow, that big a list, huh?
But the fun fact is, it actually broke. So it's been a minute since I've used it.
Oh, gotcha.
I've got to fix it. But a lot of weird stuff for the children. Like the kids would get on these kicks of different toys that I'd never heard of, and I'm boomering while they're naming these characters, but nothing too weird. I haven't printed any dicks yet, so
Whoa,
we're good.
whoa! This is a family show. God, we're
Yeah,
trying.
geez,
We're trying to
guys.
get.
Oh,
We're trying to
man.
get this on the Disney podcast channel. Come on now.
Oh man.
Penises.
Look,
Haven't
penises
printed any
are-
penises.
not gonna prevent you from getting on
I
Disney.
guess that's fair. Oh my god.
All
They're
right.
gonna
so-
roll out the red carpet for you.
I was just gonna say, so why don't you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves and your podcast and what you guys do and why other people should watch you.
Well, I'm Cam. I have been podcasting since 2016 in one way or another. But yeah, at that point when I started, it was just kind of, I was like a secret closeted anarchist person. And I was paired with a Trump supporter and another anarchist who didn't realize that I was like on her side. And so it was so funny because they thought I was that libertarian in the middle. And so they'd get in arguments and I was just the guy in the middle going, like, being able to go on both sides. And they had no idea. It's a beautiful thing. I think one of them actually quit the show, the Trump supporter, after getting pissed off. And I don't think she ever found out. But
Oh,
no,
wow.
yeah. So I then, we did that 4 years ago for a short stint. And then I resurrected it about 2 years ago now, and it was called Make Liberty Great Again. That was the original name of the show. And then a couple months ago, I guess, was it January that we decided to throw in together and rebrand? Something like that.
Something like that.
I have no idea. But no, so it was a news show for a while. And I thought that libertarians needed a late night show, and that was the dumbest thing I ever did in my life. Because reading the news every day and every week and trying to keep up with this stuff is a slog. And sure, you can get some good arguments or funny moments out of it, but it was terrible. And then I heard Joe Rogan talking to someone about how the reason he thought he was successful and the reason he did what he did was because he had fun doing it. And I thought, what would I have fun doing? And it's just making jokes, shooting the shit, if that's an okay word, Disney. And just talking about deep things and talking to thought criminals and people who are not allowed to say what they want to say out in the open, and we just want to have those harder conversations. And so I brought Jessica on. I slowly talked her into being my co-host. I just kept inviting her over and over again, and then I was like, you're doing this right, and she was like, okay, fine. And yeah, at this point we talk to people that are outside of the norm, mostly. So I mean, a lot of times it is people in our kind of segment, subsect of the population. But we also talked to Hotep Jesus last month, and then this last Tuesday we talked to Thaddeus Russell, the guy who wrote A Renegade History of the United States. Mm-hmm. So we just want to have fun, man.
Well, now that it's nice to hear you say that, but this is not a day and age where you can just have fun anymore, right? I mean, it's you mentioned thought criminals, and it's like putting it out there these days, like. I honestly, we have little to no following, but we have a great little following that we enjoy, so we keep doing this and we love doing it. But I more and more think about the thought police that are out there and how strong they are actually getting, and to where, as John knows, Jessica, you might as well. I've begun this inevitable slide into a pit of despair / acceptance of
taking the black pill.
This is well,
oh dear.
Well, because there's a reason, and I'll put this question to you, Cam, and I ask people this all the time on the show. Whatever, what is a reasonable solution in this day and age for the literal crisis we have in our government that doesn't have an opposition that's organized or strong enough in power to make change or stop the change that they're capitulating to?
Well, I think that the enemies, they have the upper hand at this point. I feel like that's very clear. And kind of where I stand is, I believe in exiting the system and making it as hard as possible for the government, the city, whatever, to impose their will on me. So that's where I am. I want to be able to be more self-sustained. Like, I'm not worried about being canceled because I work for myself and I work for another guy who makes podcasts with me. So I can't be fired for saying what I'm saying. That's great. We also all of our shows end up in all the regular places, YouTube, iTunes, whatever. But we also utilize library, also called Odyssey, which is on the blockchain, so that when our shows go out, they can't stop us. It's going to be there. It's going to be findable no matter what. And so that's kind of where I am. I haven't figured everything out yet. I'm working on it. But my goal is to take and I know Jessica's the same way, and kind of part of our show and part of what we do is combating the black pilledness. Because we do believe that there are white pills out there. We do believe there's hope, and there are ways to make yourself freer and to fight these things off. But it's just, we're kind of what our show is doing and what it's going to build to over time is exploring our options and finding those ways to make ourselves even freer and give some tips to those that watch it with us, if that makes any sense.
And absolutely. However, I'm going to posit that is in every corporate takeover, government takeover, sci-fi movie you've ever watched. There's always, this is how the underground movement starts, right? Right? Like, this is basically what it sounds like we're saying we have to do. And don't get me wrong, I'm in the process of doing that right now. John will vouch for me. We're getting off. We're going out. We're getting 10 acres out in the middle of nowhere and just going to hold up shop. But this is what is so disenchanting, is that in my own country, where I've lived all of my life, and in many ways been proud of my country throughout my 50-something years, am at this point. And this is what we're actually having to say is like probably the best move to make. Is that
Well,
not scary?
I would say it was scary if that hasn't been more or less my outlook for all of my life. Because
Right.
even though when I was younger, I was, raised up a neocon to love Bush and all that crap. The whole time I've always had this distaste for having to follow stuff that I had no. I mean, you're Gen X, you should know. You don't want to follow the bullshit that the boomers set up for us. Like, I mean,
We're trying to
come
keep our
on.
heads down in all of this. To be
Right.
honest with you,
But so growing up, because I don't know where you are in the United States, but I grew up in the deep South. I grew up in Alabama, so I didn't grow up racist, but I did grow up with a love of decentralization, of wanting to disconnect from DC.
hmm
So even though I had those tendencies, everyone was like, I'd rather not be controlled by DC. So it's always been some subplot in my mind that I wanted to disconnect from those people, and it's just so it's not a depressing thing for me. It's
right,
freedom for me. And so like there are a lot of dark things, but at the end of the day, what I'm looking for is something I've always wanted. And so hopefully, if we do the right things, if we talk to the right people, if we set the right example, we can create a small contingency of people who do the same thing. And, we don't end up being Randy and Vicky Weaver on Ruby Ridge. We don't
right.
end up being Waco. We find ways to live around what we've seen happen in the past. But, there's not there's not a set and sure certain win for us. But if we don't win, or rather, if we don't live in, even if the percentage of success is infinitesimal, if we don't live in that 5, 10, 15%, we're not going to live any lives we want to live.
Right.
We're going to live in the darkness. So that's not interesting to me. So I choose to live in the light as much as I can.
Well, and that, and of course, call me a doomsayer, whatever you want. I always try and look at these things to what appear, for all appearances, is the logical conclusion. I mean, there's a, there's still going to come a point where we're at now that they can take you off the grid themselves. So, like, I understand trying to get that voice out there and, securing that it stays out there. But if they can shut down your voice before it ever gets out there, I mean, targeting internet service and shutting you down that way is very easy now for them.
Yeah.
Shutting down cellular in an immediate area around you to where you can't get a signal out. I mean, so are we at a point that any of this is going to make a difference? That's it keeps rolling through my head asking that question, and I
I would s- I would say so simply because, like it took me a while to get past the idea that because a lot of the way the government works at this point is like snail mail in like I would say email world, but we're beyond that. Like the way technology is running, the government's always trying to keep up with it. So
I
so
can get
the so I mean look, the Second Amendment has been an argument and conversation and very heated for the past 100 years. Let's say, just let me pick a number out of my hat, 100 years. But really, the last 30 or 40 have been the worst. Um, but right now, like we talked about, I think, yeah, we were on. I can print a gun in my house.
sure,
Like
sure,
that puts the Second Amendment argument out of the equation. The debate's over. I can
Yep.
do it in my house.
right,
And
Right.
so, like, that is a massive white pill for me. Because is it perfect yet? No. But as things progress and as people do this, it's going to get cheaper and it's going to proliferate all the more. And so, I mean, I see so much hope in what I could just say, oh, well, this is never going to be good. I mean, look at, like, Jessica can talk about this too, but look at what happened in the Soviet Union in the 1980s. Those people never thought they were going to be out from under communism. But then there were some crazy things that happened that over time, and some of it was American media. Some of it, like Jessica will talk about, McDonald's French fries.
Yeah.
People smelled it over the wall. Like there are a lot of things that can turn the tide in an instant. and we shouldn't count those out in some amount of either fear um,
Hopelessness.
or yeah, hopelessness, cynicism, pessimism. There are these little things that we can see and go, it's happened once, it can happen again.
It will happen again.
Right.
Historically, it's percent statistically it will happen again. It's
Right.
common.
Well,
Yeah.
well, we talked about this on a previous show about this crisis cycle that is naturally occurring, right? There's a kind of a crisis cycle in any civilization, whatever society. But we're at a point now where we can generate crisis, right? And Jessica, I know you're a big fan of freedom of speech, the First Amendment, right?
Sure.
But
yeah.
But right now, the government has uniquely placed itself to where the people are easily dependent upon the government.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, with this attacks on the First Amendment, speech, literature, things like this, everything that's going on, this is an open door for the government to start to make policy on this. Because the people are asking for it, that vocal minority is asking for it, and it's getting louder, and companies, corporations are capitulating.
Sure.
I mean, they're about to come after the First Amendment. We're going to see it.
Oh, if they're not about to come after the First Amendment, they're after it, and they've been after it for a long
Well,
time.
no, I mean our government through
Yes,
right?
Yep. Yes, they will. They have been for a very long time, since the inception of the First Amendment, and before that, been after the speech. But
Right.
I would like to point out something. What you were saying about big tech capitulation is absolutely dead spot on. That's absolutely happening. Look what happened when they tried to suppress the Biden story before the election. They Streisand affected that story into far more popularity than it would have otherwise had on its own. Every well-meaning, well-intentioned intervention they try almost always blows up in their face. So I am sort of relying on their incompetence, which is there's a lot of evidence for. And that gives me an evidence-based trust in our ability to find ways around them.
I'm not sure that the consequences were all that big for their incompetence. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, okay, they're continuously incompetent. We all see that, but at the same time, the whole agenda just kind of moves forward, regardless of its
yeah.
incompetence.
But I will say, we don't have to watch them actively fail. What we have to do is when these things come out, you'll see those people who have read this and seen what happened. Like, look at, for instance, the Covington Catholic kids.
Mm-hmm.
That absolute abortion of a news cycle where they talked about how this kid was this bad and tried to get him kicked out of school, tried to do all this to him. And then the video came out, 2 hours later?
Mm-hmm.
And you could see the entire story. And right now, so I've said this before, but I mentioned Ruby Ridge, I mentioned Waco. But right now, we have people who aren't just carrying cameras or carrying we don't have to depend on news people to play stuff on TV anymore. We have 200 million some odd people with cameras on their phone that connect to the internet and live stream immediately. So right now we have that's a good example. There are others as well, but
what
Waco,
about that?
Ruby Ridge would be harder to that would be harder to happen in this day and age, purely because everyone would be able to point a camera at it and show it in prime time. I mean, the Bundys.
I was just about to say, look at what happened with the Bundys. They were able to get the word out about what was happening to them, and thousands of people came out, armed people came out, and they were forced to stand down from that situation. And Amon Bundy was shot. That was deeply, deeply unfortunate, but that could have been all of them. That could have been a bloodbath. And people heard about it, and they came down out of the highlands by their hundreds and their thousands. And so,
We'd love to see it.
don't give them the win before they have it. They haven't won. They've got an upper hand, but don't give them the win before they have it.
Well, I think a lot of it is the knowledge that this 2 years, this 2 year span that we're dealing with right now, is incredibly intimidating, knowing that for a lot of things we're going to have to rely on that more centrist Democrat holdout in the Senate to keep things from just going through on on that partisan vote. There's a lot of power that can be wielded now in Washington that they're set up to have, and that it makes me nervous. There's a lot, John, what were you talking about, that it was overheard the conversation telling Biden to go big, to
Oh, yeah, he supposedly met with a bunch of historians, which I'm not sure exactly why, but they're like, is now the time to go big with America and stuff. Like it was some total fluff piece, but
Oh,
what
good.
the contents of it, of what was being discussed, like to go big, was pretty terrifying. So it was obviously getting rid of the filibuster, um, and like putting through basically the new Green Deal,
Hmm.
but regardless of bipartisan support, so like ignoring any kind of bipartisan policy, ignoring any kind of compromise, or like just go full on, with whatever we want, basically.
right,
So whatever's going to be put in front of him,
right,
they have a much clearer line to him, and then
Right.
he's going to sign it.
So the black, that's not entirely a black pill when you think about it. It's actually kind of a white pill, because no matter what kind of laws they pass, people don't follow them. Look at the non-compliance they had. Yes, they had a lot of compliance with masking and vaccine and all that stuff, but look at the non-compliance. It's a
sure,
significant percent. It's not just 1% of the population, 2%. It's a significant percent, and a much smaller percentage of the people participated in the American Revolution
right.
Yes,
and
yeah.
overthrew
Well,
the British. And we have a much higher percentage of that just interwoven into our culture to tell the government to go fuck itself, just because fuck you, that's why. Like, there
Yeah.
doesn't even have to be a reason. If you're telling me what to do, I'm not going to do it. I was at a dirt track rally last weekend, or weekend before last. Hundreds of people, no masks, no nothing, partying, having a good time. Life is normal if we want it to be. And we can
Right.
ignore
Yeah.
them and not do what they say. And, yeah, they're going to fight us. The empire is going to fight,
Well,
Unless you're
so
in
luckily,
Miami.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
luckily, Robert and I both live in Florida, so we
Oh,
haven't
me
really
too.
had to deal with. Oh, do you really? That's awesome.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, he does.
I did not realize that.
I'm not from there, but I live there.
Yeah, me either. I don't think most people are from Florida.
It's
Very hard to
actually
find someone who's born there.
7 to 10 years is when the cracker DNA gene goes into your DNA strand.
Right.
Is what they say. 7 to 10 years is when that Florida
Yeah.
cracker, not
Oh, no,
not the
I mean, I got it
racist
for
cracker,
sure.
Florida cracker.
Yeah, Florida cracker.
Oh yeah, well I'm
Totally
an
different thing.
Alabama cracker, so I think it might just be
Right.
taking off some of my
Well,
crackerdom.
actually, the new name for it used to be Florida cracker. Now it's Florida man. That's
Florida
the
man,
gene that's
yeah.
that's the gene that's got to set into your DNA. So
I aim to be the
Everyone's-
Florida Mayo monkey.
mm,
That's my
anyway.
That is a terrible name. It's so unappetizing.
Oh, it is.
Ew.
Like
But
you
no-
can smell the name. It's hot here and humid.
Right.
Oh, with mayo? Oh my god,
yeah.
no.
Hey, don't knock Mayo. Don't knock Mayo.
Oh my god.
But no,
Mayo
John.
in the
Turns
sun
brown,
is
like-
not good.
Right.
I mean, John. John makes a good point. Here in Florida, how there are a lot less restrictions on masks and everything. It doesn't
What I mean
necessarily.
is-
It doesn't stop me from wearing one because I'm just.
Right.
It's me. It's whatever.
That's
but,
the thing is, everyone here would agree. I think that you should be free to wear one.
Sure.
if you
Right.
want. Like that's yeah.
But here's the thing. Now that we've got a very democratic federal government ahead of us, but the mainstream media is, of course, on that side. So take masks for instance. Anybody that doesn't comply, when you see the stories about them, I mean, literally, these people are painted as akin to terrorists without the mask. So now you've got, and this is the narrative that's being spewed out there, and why Biden is, they're giving him a 60% popularity, score, for his first 100 days, blah blah blah. It's like they're going to keep spinning it out there, and that's slogging through the news. There are a lot of people are out there doing that, but they're slogging through headlines and just gaining their side's perspective from these snippets of reality. And
How much Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
No,
sorry.
no. So no, go ahead.
How dare you.
I just asked,
How much?
how do you wake them up?
How much integrity has the media class lost in just the last 18 months?
That doesn't.
Over all of this. So many people, yes, they do. A lot of people still
They're-
get their news
right.
from, but a great wave of people is waking up to see these stories as bullshit. Like, look at this terrible shooting that just happened, and the media jumped all over to call this guy a white supremacist, and he's basically a dragon in the KKK. We looked at his skin. We know everything we need to know. And then it turns out he's from Syria. And oh, what happened? Our government bombed Syria a month ago.
Right.
And then a Syrian person shoots up a grocery store. So, and that's a
what is
wake-up call. That's what we call a red pill, that people will go, these people
Yeah.
are lying to us.
And
But what was the
while
narrative
true-
they spun out of that, though?
well,
It was
yeah,
about
but-
guns.
But
Well, yeah, of
the
course.
Right.
narrative
About-
only takes so often. You show that lie that they do it to themselves. We don't even have to show that they're lying. They completely rob themselves of integrity all on their own. And then people go, hey, they lied to us. This wasn't what this was about. Not everyone, but some people were red pilled by that event, and the event before that, and the event before that. So they're self-defeating. It's a recursive programming. It'll run itself out until they have no integrity left, just like the government and the media in the Soviet Union did.
But
No one
well,
believed the government by the 80s of the
Right.
Soviet Union.
One of the things that I wanted to mention in regards to masks, and this is actually one of the conversations I had with Jessica early on, was how much courage is passed through a smile. Because I would go through the store, Sam's Club, whatever, and I was just like, I'm not doing this. You know, like I have I don't want to wear that fucking mask.
No, I hate it. I hate it.
Excuse me, Disney. But no, I don't want to wear that mask, and for different reasons that are pretty personal. But I have some things I'm not going to do it. But what was surprising to me was how many people I would walk past and I would smile at them, and then they would take their masks off
Mhm.
because they didn't even realize that that was an option.
right.
And so there are these little things like that I see and I go, maybe people are slightly easier to get through to than I even thought before. Maybe there's even a little more hope than I even paid attention to or would have said previous to that.
Right.
But
Well, now see, for me, it winds up being, because this is, the argument I have, and this speaks to that cameras everywhere and people catching all these confrontations about masks, is this idea that people walk into a store and tell that store manager that he has no right to prevent them from exercising their right to shop in his store. And I will make the argument, if a private establishment asks me to wear a mask to do business in their store, I'm going to do that because that's their right. And if they ask me not to come in because I don't have one, that is their right as well as a private business. I don't have some inalienable human right to shop in their store. So I observe those rules, and that's why I wear a mask. But, I understand that there are some places that aren't going to enforce it. I go into them all the time with a mask on and see everyone else not doing it. But
Yeah.
it's me.
Like
I'm a boomer that way. Go ahead.
My local grocery store has a sign outside of it that requires masks. I have never once worn a mask in there. My family probably spent $10,000 last year in that store. So I doubt that the manager who sees me there every week and knows that I dropped that kind of money in that store is not going to ask me to leave. You should pick your battles. When I go into Michael's, that place is full of women.
Mhm.
So I wear a mask because I
Right.
know if any place is going to make a problem for me,
See,
it's
there's my
the
point.
suburban
Right.
white woman is going to climb down my throat for
Right.
not wearing a mask. So you got to pick your battles.
Right? There's a reason why they tell you to put your food in the bear box when you're going in the woods.
That's
I'm
right.
just saying,
Right.
right? Pick your battles.
and that's the thing. When it comes to private property, you're not going to find Jessica or me in disagreement with that. I do want to be asked, though.
Yes,
That's the thing. Like I know that there are a lot of places out there that have signs up, but it's not because they want to have the signs up.
Mhm.
And so I I realized that when I walked into a place and the guy looked so mad that I walked in because he had to put his mask on. And I was like, I was like, dude, you don't have to wear that with me, with just me in the store. And he goes,
Mhm.
oh, okay. And he got so happy. And so that was
Yeah.
one of those things. Like I know that there's a lot of corporate stuff and there's a lot of
Mhm.
other things, but there are a lot of people who don't want you to wear a mask in their store, who don't want to do that. And
Mhm.
so if I am actually asked, hey, wear this or leave, I'm happy to leave. I don't have a right to be in your store past that point.
Mhm.
Right.
However, I do want you to ask because we live in a point in time where people have been programmed and threatened and all of that. And so they automatically just put up the sign. I love
Yeah.
the signs that are outside of stores and restaurants right now that say light suggestion. I saw one the other day that said light suggestion, wear a mask if you come in, but you don't have to. And I was like, yes, I
Most of the
like
ones,
that.
most of the ones I see are so old that they still say by order of the governor. Back
Yeah.
when he actually did the first actual like
Right.
15
Right.
days, the original 15 days that we were supposed to take, and we did actually lock down for that time. And then after that, he was just kind of like start opening stuff up. Like it's fine.
So in Italy, I
Really.
don't know if you guys. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
Oh
you.
no, no, I was just saying. So they haven't changed the signs, so it's just been the same sign. So they have that up.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so I'm just gonna walk in and see what happens. I'm not gonna worry about
Yeah.
the map
Right,
because
right.
obviously you don't care enough to change the sign.
Right.
So
But if the
yeah,
moment someone asks me to wear a mask or leave, I'll be
you have a
happy to
choice to
take
make.
my business elsewhere.
Yeah.
That's fine with me. I'll vote with with my dollars in that instance.
So, sorry,
But
Jessica, go
until
ahead.
Right.
then, I want to actually be asked.
Yeah.
If a human wants to ask me to get off their property, I would like that to happen.
Fair enough. I was going to talk about that story in Italy. I don't know if you guys saw. Italy had some really hardcore lockdown restrictions,
Yeah.
and eventually restaurants got fed up with it. They're not going to survive unless they open their doors. So they opened them, and people came. The cops showed up to shut the place down, and the entire population of this restaurant in Italy started screaming liberty, liberty, liberty,
Mm.
freedom in Italian. And the cops left with their tails tucked between their legs. They walked out because, what can they do? They're going to shoot everybody in the restaurant,
Yeah.
with live streaming?
Well,
No,
Yeah, if only we
no.
had that many libertarians in one space in the United
Well,
States. They're all spread out. We're
Amen.
too spread out.
and that's the thing. It doesn't necessarily even take
Yeah.
libertarians. When Andrew Cuomo put in
Conservatives
the
fuck it up though.
when
Sorry.
Andrew when Andrew Cuomo put back in place the 10 o'clock curfew, I saw a video in New York City that someone had turned on the camera and it was like 10:01, and everyone in that restaurant was chanting "Fuck you, Cuomo" over and over again, and it was like, okay, there are people who are, and I don't know if the restaurant cared, but that was a moment where people were pushing up against the government rather than the restaurant. And so I thought that was a beautiful moment, personally.
Yeah. So pointing your finger at the appropriate target, other than the poor guy who owns the place who's just like, guys, I'm just trying not to get shut down here. you know,
Yeah.
well,
if your problems with the governor, I promise.
Well, I look at situations like what's going on, has been going on in Miami over the last week or so, with spring breakers showing up there, and a lot of people in the local areas partying and spring break, and so many people, just so much chaos going on, and the police were having a hard time. So, like when they were having to respond to things like fights or anything where someone was potentially breaking the law, they were being surrounded by these masses of people who were would encircle them and everything. But from the COVID aspect, the city determined that there was just too much of it. They weren't ready for spring break. It wasn't a good idea, so they initiated 8 p.m. curfews, and of course, immediately it came out that it was targeting African Americans and Latinos disproportionately. That these curfews
they
and
do.
everything was like, oh, this is racist why they're doing this, and I'm like, no, this is a community. Trying to say, hold on, we're not ready for this.
So I was at an event 2 weekends ago. So it's been 2 weeks. The incubation time of COVID at its
Right.
very worst, with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. Has there been some sort of spike in my area? No. There's no more hospital beds being filled up. There were older people there, little kids, all manner walk of life. And it was just like it was before COVID. And hundreds of people together in this crowd. And no spike. No spike.
Right.
I don't think, I don't deny that there is something a little close to the flu that's going around killing very sick, very fat, very old people, who were susceptible to diseases anyway,
Right.
would not have made it through the year anyway. And
Sure.
the rest of us cannot stop living our lives because of that circumstance. No time else in history have the healthy been asked to quarantine, or shut themselves off, shut their lives down. Young people who are 16, 17 years old, like the halcyon time of your life, be told you have to stay inside your house. You can't have any contact with your friends. How many unplanned pregnancies
Suicides.
didn't happen? Or how many suicides did happen? You
Right.
know, like life as we know it
That's when
was
we don't-
stopped.
That's the one that we don't talk about at all, is the suicides, right? When people say, oh, well, the lockdowns would be worth it if it saved one life. Well, how many did it end?
Well,
Like,
I mean,
directly due to the lockdowns, not being able to see anyone.
It's a
Like,
lie.
it didn't say that how many lives it saved is negative. It's a negative number. Like,
And are we sacrifice the young for the old that were likely
Yeah.
not to have made it through the year anyway?
makes no sense.
It makes no sense unless it's
Yeah.
something that it's not. It's not.
Right,
It's doing something it's not saying that it's doing.
right.
okay, I can agree with that to a certain extent. Now, I will say this: anybody who lives in Florida, I would think you might agree that most places that get pounded by spring breakers or Biketoberfest
Yeah.
or any of these things, it is
Yeah,
a
they
very
turn on Miami.
severe love-hate relationship, right? It is yes, there's a lot of money about to come into the town or into the city, but there's about to be a lot of stupid shit. I mean, there already, there was the story, the spring break girl who, of course, it was two African American men involved in killing her in a hotel room, raping and killing her during all of this, right? So everything is getting spun, and I have to ask the question: if you've got a community, right? We've been told about a pandemic all this time. Like, there's going to be people that have bought into it. You have who just didn't have any choice, right? The brainwashing happens. So if they're saying, "Oh my God, this is going on in our community, do something." I mean, don't you have to do something about that, especially when it's something like spring break and the chaos that does bring?
Well,
I mean,
did they try to do something about it before or after the hotels were filled? Before or after?
it was after people started showing up, and then they realized the level of chaos because it's more than they normally experience in spring breaks pre-COVID-19 is what they're saying. Like, they're really off the fucking chain this time around, as it were.
Right, and well, that's just one of those things that it's a tough place to be because the hotels invited these people to stay on their property, took their money for them to stay on their property and have their spring break, and then once they get down there, after they've paid their money, after they've done all of this,
Right.
the government's like, you can't stay up past 8 p.m.
Right.
I mean,
I
come
get
on.
you.
Like I understand the worries of the community, but if they knew what was going to happen. Maybe they didn't know the sheer numbers of it, but they knew spring break was coming. If they
Yeah.
didn't want that to happen, that should have been something addressed before people started buying tickets in the hotels.
Yeah, well, they tried to put a stop to it last year, and that didn't go over so well either.
Nope. Sure
Right.
didn't.
Right, but I mean, again, it's like, from a libertarian standpoint, in these situations, is not the community the important aspect? Like, if the government, the ruling body, is actually acting in their best interest, does that
I
not
think
win?
the community is definitely important, but if the community and the government tried last year and failed, they had a whole year to decide what they needed to do to succeed.
Right.
But instead, they didn't do anything. They sold the tickets. They had people that were, I mean, they had people who were invited to be there, and then they decided, no, you can't
Right.
really be here the way you decide. I mean, it's a muddy situation, but it is one that if the community does bear some, well, I think more so than the community. I think that the people in the community have their private property. They have what they own and what they can say for sure what people can do. But after you've made a deal with someone, you've made a bargain, you've signed the paperwork, I mean, it would be very fraudulent what they've done. Like you can't actually have this. And I don't know, like it's a muddy situation
Right,
to be
right.
sure. But they had a year to figure out how to make
Sure.
this not happen. And
But-
instead they waited till people were there.
But
And that's
you-
kind of shitty.
You have a media that it will support anyone who comes up who wants to throw out a culture wars, reasoning. Oh, this is about racism, and it's
Right.
like, okay, no, this is people reacting to holy shit. There's just a whole lot of people here we weren't expecting, right? We didn't expect all of this, and I don't know. It gets so muddy. I'm like, I don't want to walk in that water, right? But it
Right.
is happening close to home, and there's other places in the state where it can happen. And yes, we're a little more relaxed, and DeSantis has been really good about that with the whole COVID approach, in my opinion. It's like, man, whose rights are getting stepped on, and how's the bill of goods being sold to you, right?
Right.
Yeah. I'm just saying, if you agree to something, you've agreed to it.
Right.
If anything else, those kids should have been giving every dollar that they gave to the hotels back, and they should have been able to move on somewhere else.
Right.
But
I'll be
that's not going to happen.
I'll be interested to see some of the videos that come out of there. Like, I don't know. It's weird that there's not a lot of that happening, because you would think there would just be all sorts of outrage videos coming from out of Miami. And I haven't seen that many being talked about, of course. So not surprising, right? You're not seeing any play in the media about that. But it is because of, you mentioned this with cameras everywhere, and how it's hard to keep a lid on something, or the spinning a fake news narrative, as it were. But the sheer volume of it that goes on, doesn't that just give the mainstream media something to divert your attention with 3 minutes after you've read a headline? It's not even a 5-minute news cycle anymore. I mean, it's just shortened so much.
So there's something called the attention economy. And you only have a finite amount of minutes in your day where you're not working, sleeping, eating, whatever it is that you can actually spend taking in media. And if you're already watching, like nightly news and, your TV shows, it's very finite. And the alternative media is breaking into more and more of that attention economy. Less and less of it is going to places like CNN, for example. CNN would murder babies to get Joe Rogan's numbers. More people
or
listen
to have Trump back at this point, because he was a boon to their ratings. CNN's
Right.
dropping like crazy right now.
So that legacy media is not only losing integrity, they're losing audience in troves, and alternative media is gaining them and picking them up. And even just small podcasts like this, we're taking some of that attention away from the mainstream, from the influence peddlers and the narrative peddlers, the cathedral, as Mencius Bulbug refers to them. So the more I say, people are saying that the podcast market is oversaturated. I say more podcasts, for as many types of different attention span as there is, so that we can pull more and more people off of legacy media. And we do that every day. We're doing it right now. Whoever's watching us, you are part of the revolution, because you're not watching CNN or Fox News right now. Bravo.
That's right. You're watching our dumbasses instead. Congratulations.
It's better than the alternative, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Well, but they're gaining more ground with the media companies. So we talk. We could talk all day about YouTube and censorship, Facebook and censorship,
Sure.
this kind of thing, where the big companies like this are capitulating before the government tells them they have to. Now they're starting to self-censor, self-police, right? And I understand that, as new media, you can move to a new avenue, but as that gains popularity and size, thus more potential for them to capitulate next to maintain that monetary base. You know, because that's where it's going to move to where they have to squash now, right? As these things that they're able to put forward. I mean, it's a no-brainer to put shit forward right now, right? Like, you can get stuff, just call it a budgetary resolution, and then we don't even have to worry about the split vote. Kamala decides everything, right? And, you know, silly shit like that. I mean,
So-
it's the battle that you have to fight is I don't know. Tell me, Jessica.
It is indeed a very overwhelming thing if you take it all in one big picture kind of breath. So you have to focus on where you can make the most difference. And it might be a small thing that's not going to win the war. But, you know, every piece, you know, that you can, like I said, pull away from that attention economy, advise someone towards self-reliance, advise someone toward critical thought. All of these things, they do make a difference. They resonate. It's like that butterfly effect thing. You don't know when you say something to someone if it's going to affect them 10 years down the line in their thinking. And it might be at a critical moment. And I remember recently, not so recently, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, watching Judge Napolitano. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the judge. Judge Napolitano was giving a speech at the Mises Institute about whatever happened to the Constitution. And it was all about how the government has basically, over the years, just like vultures, just pulled apart this document, basically made it worthless. You know, it doesn't really prevent them from expanding their powers anymore. And I got really like worried and upset as he was like going on and on about this. And he said, I'm an old man. I may very likely and very luckily die in my bed. But some of you will die in firing squads to the sounds of cheers. And when that moment is there, you will know what to do. And I took that very seriously. If this be revolution, then let it be. Let it be. You can't be, you know, we don't get to choose which time we live in.
Right.
And you know what I'm saying? So you don't run from it. You lean into it. Because your enemy wants you demoralized and believing that you cannot win anything. But don't give them the battle before they've even won it. They haven't won it. They haven't won.
They tried to take out Alex Jones, like, comprehensively.
Yeah.
But you can watch Alex Jones talk every single day of the week for multiple hours every day. Because, and it's not just because Alex Jones has balls of steel and tried to, and worked and started making money doing other things rather than getting ads on YouTube. It was because he, and then people who liked him or people who didn't like him and thought what they did was unfair, started going, hey, we've got to find a way around this. And being someone who currently works in coding in the tech sector, even though, you know, that's not my absolute calling in this life, but I am privy to a lot of people who are very unhappy with how things are going with big tech, things that are going with the monetary policy, with any number of things. Like, look at cryptocurrency. One of my friends is working in a cryptocurrency, and the way they're doing it, the way they've decentralized it, the wallet that they've made, right now is untouchable by the feds. There are people who've decentralized video. There are people who are working on decentralizing the internet so that it's not ISOs or an ISPs or whatever that's controlling things. There are people who are currently going, there were people I liked or didn't like, but they were shut up, and I'm not going to let myself be shut up. So there are a lot of little people. You may not know their names yet,
Right.
but there are a lot of little people who are working to make it so that we don't have to do what they tell us to. So, I mean, there's a lot of hope. You just need to know where to look for it.
Well, so, you know, right now, our government is poised to make a very specific move that's going to cement a large portion of the American public on their side, and that is the discussion that's going on right now about recurring stimulus payments. Right? So, and the brackets that they're targeting, Like with this last round of stimulus checks, I'm sorry, $75,000 a year is good money in this day and age,
Right.
comparatively when you're looking at jobs,
Mhm.
right? But that's the cap, right? So we're talking middle to upper middle class people and below. That's a large sector of the population to buy off.
Right.
Mhm.
So during the last decades of the Roman Empire, during the last decades of their power, so to speak, because they didn't go out powerful, but that was a very similar move that the Roman government made, was to pay their people for their support. And to me, that is the sign of the decline.
Oh, yeah.
Our leaders are ancient. Old men as leaders is a sign of decline. Everywhere you look around, they are what is in decline. The rest of the world economy, the crypto, all of the things he mentioned, all of these things are poised to take off. What is crumbling is the edifice of the state. The knowledge, the ingrained knowledge that we need them to maintain a orderly civilization is going by the wayside. It is a dead technology. It's like candles. And we can't be afraid to try light bulbs because all we've ever known is candles, or that the candle makers will go out of business. It's time to move on to light bulbs.
Well, Cam, you're involved. You talk about being knowledgeable of what the technology sector. I mean, that is an argument that I make, is that we're in the day and age where technology takes that archaic reference that you make and puts a whole different spin on what the means of controlling these kind of things. And I know you say that they're chasing technology from the government. The government is chasing technology, but still, is there not the capability for them to use technology against us to cement their hold on us?
I mean, they can certainly try, but a lot of the focus of the people that I'm talking about, the technologies that are being created and thought up at this moment, are the things that they can't touch, are the things that make it so that they can't get to it at all. And so we're not at the perfect system yet. We don't have all the perfect technology yet, but it's rapid. Like I saw two things within the last month that came with, like, I had to go back to printed firearms. Saw two things last month that made me go, oh wow, they're really starting to do stuff. Well, three. I'll mention three. The first one was that they were reloading bullets and printing out bullets that they were reloading. I was like, that sounds like it might not be anything, but just wait till they keep going. Today, I saw a video of a guy using a 3D printed magazine. And so it's not just the lower the lowers. It's not just that. It's expanding.
Right.
The craziest thing I saw was the guy that's out there. If I could remember his name on Twitter, I would tell you, but I can't off the top of my head. He is working on different at-home methods that are easy. I saw a video, and it was stuff that you can get where you can literally create the gunpowder and the other things that you need to do the other part of the reloading. And so there are a lot of these things. Like, yeah, could the government shut off your internet? Yeah, but they can't. They'd have to come and get your computer to get these files. They'd have to take away your printer. They'd have to take away all of these things. Like they would have to take away so much that it would be almost insanity for them to try. And so
And they would
there's
be resisted if they did
Yeah.
try.
Well, I won't lie to you. And again, this is me. I'm old, and so I have rambling thoughts that border on conspiracy theory. Border on.
Border. They're
But
conspiracy adjacent, as they like to
I,
say.
I, we live in a day and age that gives me the fear that we could soon see a terrorist attack in this country that involves an EMP device.
yeah.
Sure.
Something suspiciously targeted at something specific, right? But and when something like that is deployed, right, the tools that so many people rely on, right? This is that reliance that's been built. Look at it. I mean, who doesn't have a phone in their hand or in their back pocket 24/7? Even while sleeping, it's right there within reach, right? So they've got the means to keep it in your face, but they also have the means to shut it down. Like you were saying. And yes, there are things that can be done, but I mean, I don't know, man. It's I'm not putting I'm not putting anything past us as to
Well,
what the next crisis is going to be. And
Anything they do to shut us down at that level would so cut into their funding that it would be
and their
purposeless.
influence.
It would be purposeless to them. It would be like cutting off their nose to spite their face, because we are where the taxes come from. Our productivity is where their power and their money comes from. So to shut us down in that way is just to shut themselves down.
well, if you have, you talk about Waco, Ruby Ridge, that kind of thing. So in the present day, if they saw a situation like that and the means of communication is through devices, well, you don't even have to kill anybody off. A good EMP strike and you shut anything down in the area for, a decent amount of time, and then you just go
Yeah.
in and do what you need to do.
And it'd be
Right?
very easy to make the argument that you haven't technically taken their rights away,
Right.
right?
Well,
No.
just
Technically
was
not.
it
I mean,
yesterday?
obviously. Go ahead.
Was it yesterday or the day before? I think his name was Sharif.
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
Mhm.
There was a guy. They set off a red flag law on this guy, and how long was I can't remember how long was the standoff?
It was 17 or so hours. They were 27 hours, I think, was the
Right.
standoff. Yeah, it was a
And
7.
so he was all alone, and so it ended peacefully, good for everyone involved. But the whole time during this standoff, his girlfriend, who knew what was going on, was tweeting about it.
Mhm,
His
mhm.
people who they would have to set off an EMP and have these things happen in such a way that no one in the vicinity. I mean, it would raise red flags no matter what.
Right.
And there are a lot of everyone's connected. All it takes is one whisper, and then it's on Twitter, and
Mhm.
everyone's discussing it. I'd never heard of a guy named Sharif,
Yeah, but see,
and now I know his whole life story.
but the beauty of it is from the media, from keeping up with news stories and this and the other over the last 2 or 3 years, I would easily buy the story if I were just the general sheeple. I would easily buy the story that it was China that set something like that off, because guess what? There's been an underlying narrative about China, testing weapons, this, that, and the other, talking about EMP weapons and the kinds of things, and
Oh,
just to
man.
seed it, right? You have I'm beginning to see everything as like seeding the crops that they're hoping to nurture a little further down the road.
Yes.
It's so sad,
So
but that's right. Go ahead.
I feel like I've maybe reached an understanding about your black pill, and I might be able to pry it loose if you'll let me try.
Oh, please go ahead.
You have to let go of the sheeple. They're gone. Those people are not gonna help you in any way, and you have to make your plans about how you will conduct your future without them in mind. And once you can let them go, then you're not dependent either psychically, emotionally, on and how you will construct your future.
Right.
You have that's a dead weight, man.
Well, yeah.
This is
Go ahead.
this
Ken.
is another thing that I was gonna say is when you come to like this pill structure of how we talk, this metaphor that we use to talk about this, is absolutely all of these are voluntary. Yes, you naturally have the blue pill like in the Matrix, but you choose if you want to be red pilled. You choose if you want to be black pilled. You choose if you want to take the white pill and see the hope. And so, regardless of what could or couldn't happen, I personally feel that the best way to deal with it is with yourself and voluntarily and figuring it out and making your decision.
Right. And see, that's really where and I think that's the crux of my black pill, as it were, is that I am being forced to resort to that. Right? That's it. That melancholy I talk about. That's the part I don't like, is that it's reached this point in this country where it's best to just get away by yourself. And so, that's the bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah.
but it keeps being rammed down my fucking throat
Right.
day in and
It's-
day out.
It's very easy and natural to take the black pill because when all you see is darkness, why would you try anything else? And
Right.
that's why we talk about the things we talk about. Why we talk to thought criminals, why we talk to all these different people, is because I used to be one hell of a cynic. Like that was my thing for years, and I fucking hated life. And then I sat down and I was like, this is not a way that I can live. And I started choosing to stop just taking the cynicism, taking the pessimism, and going, oh, yeah, of course, that's how it's going to go. And going, okay, well, if this happens, what do I do to not have to deal with it the way that everyone else is?
Right.
And so, I mean, I'm not, you can't white pill someone, what's the word, with coercion, I mean, it has to be voluntary.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, regardless of whether or not we can argue you out of your black pilledness or the pessimistic take,
Fair.
that's fine. But my hope, my white pill, is that maybe you can see some sliver of hope and decide to walk down that path rather than just giving into what the enemy wants you to do.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. I do honestly admit I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I have kids and I have grandkids.
Yeah.
Right. And
I
it's
have
and it's
5
like
children.
it's like what's in the future there, right? What's their future going to look like? And that frustration with, God, you're supposed to do something to make their future better. That used to be what your hope was as an individual. Your parents or whoever you was in your guardians were, they were supposed to help make your life better. And then you pass that on. That's paying it forward, right? Try and leave something better for them behind. And I'm like,
I mean,
God,
isn't
I
that
don't
that's
think
what
I
the
can.
that's what the actual American dream is supposed to be? Is to leave your children with something better than what you had.
Right.
So
You
what
know,
if
but everyone of course goes with, oh, you're supposed to get rich. That's the American dream. That's not what that means.
what
Anyway,
if this entire collapse idea comes to fruition and we have a big old nasty fall just like the Roman Empire and get thrust into the Dark Ages, so to speak? Isn't that land you're buying and that self-sufficiency that you're trying to
Right.
cultivate, leaving something better for your children,
Right.
given the
I
future
get
it
that.
looks like we might have? So even if you're saying, okay, I'm black-pilled about where the future of this country is going, you're still thinking in a positive way toward building something that they can rely on, such as land or
Aw.
self-sufficiency.
Jessica,
as long as you're allowed to keep that land.
that actually
Yeah.
makes me feel better to think about it like that.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, well, maybe I am doing that. No.
Yeah.
All
There you
right.
go, man. Yeah.
So,
And that's
those three
where-
goats have a purpose.
Well, that's where a lot of my motivation comes from. I may be just 32 years old, but I have 5 children, and they are the focus of everything that I do. Because whether or not good or bad comes, whether or not the system collapses, if I can teach them not to be dependent on the system, if I can teach them not to be dependent on Republicans, Democrats, presidents, senators, sheriffs, if I can teach them how to live and to give them the tools to live well and happily no matter what happens, I don't have that. My dad didn't have that. And so with or without a collapse, what I'm doing gives them a better life. And that's my motivation.
So here, let me posit this question then. Say for instance it does happen and they start kicking out stimulus checks every month. Let's just call it a UBI. Let's call it what it is, right? And they start. Do you refuse that, Cam, for your kids' sake, and teach them that you don't need that?
I buy certain tools.
Well, I mean,
and things.
I can promise you there's not going to be as many people jumping up to stop the government from handing them money. I mean, we've got
Right.
reparations
Why would
are
they?
in the talks right now, right?
Well,
I mean, it's something's going to happen there very soon, right?
I don't even mind
This-
reparations, to be honest.
And this was a conversation I had with a close friend of mine not that long ago when they started talking about the rescue plan, the money that you get for having children or whatever. And he was talking about how bad it was and how everything is going to do it. It's going to be this, that, or the other. And I took the positive approach to this, which is one, I fall within the parameters and I will make sure I don't fall outside of the parameters where I no longer ever have to pay taxes. Any dollar I get that's above that amount, I will put into building my home, building my arsenal, building my children's education. When these things are given to us, it's like, do I think they're a bad idea? Yes. Do I mind if it leads to a place where the currently corrupt and horrible system falls? I'm fine with that. Because at that point, there may be some hard times. And I don't want the hard times. I don't want to see dead people. I don't want to see people fighting. But at the end of that, there is a place for growth. There's a place for planting and cultivating and making something new and better. And so regardless of how bad it gets, there is the chance to rebuild that I will look to. And so, I mean, there's some really dark and scary things. But if I look towards the possibilities rather than towards the eventualities of the hard moments, I still have that hope. I don't have to live in that place, if that makes any sense. And as long as I'm pushing to teach my children how to take advantage of these idiots in DC, that's what I'm doing. I'm teaching them how to take advantage of these morons and to use the money that they send and destroy themselves with against them. So
Every dollar that you prevent the government taking in taxes through agorism and self-reliance is $1 less that they have to bomb Syria with. So even if you only prevented them from taking $1 from you, if all 110 million of the taxpayers in this country did that, that's $110 million that they don't have to bomb Syria with. So
Right.
each increment, each chicken you have that lays an egg that you don't pay them for is an act of rebellion. And these
And-
small, go ahead.
I was just saying, and the stimulus that they sent made it so that like I said, I didn't pay them $1 of my own money in taxes.
That's right.
They were set to get a fair sum out of my pocket because I'm an independent contractor, because I pay it all at once at the end of the year, and they sent me the check, and I just sent it back to them.
Right.
They didn't get a single dollar. They didn't get any whatsoever, any amount of my work, my labor, my time.
Your
All they
life.
got was the bullshit that they sent to me. So that, in my opinion, yeah, there's some bad stuff that's going to come, and maybe a collapse, maybe not. Maybe what we do can work around that. But I did not have to pay them, and that's a huge white pill for me. I didn't give them $1 this year, and that is fantastic.
Yeah, I could see. Now, I will ask this because I don't know. I get the feeling that, maybe it's a generational thing where, um, I guess I have some nationalism in me because I still have some of that, Cold War love of country. We were a superpower. There was a lot that we were once upon a time. Plus, I grew up with my grandparents who grew up World War II, that kind of. So there was a lot of, there was still a lot of love for country built back in those days. And I still retain that. Thus my melancholy I spoke of earlier. But do you think you're all three millennials, Jessica? If I'm not mistaken, you fall into the millennial gap as well, right?
83. So I'm what's called a zennial because I'm a elder millennial. Yeah, I'm almost 40.
Right.
Jim.
So, was there a transition with your generation, with the millennial generation, where we shifted from a love of country, because government has gotten so corrupt?
I still love my country. I love the flag. I know that's not popular for anarchists to say, but that flag does not represent the state. It represents the culture. It represents baseball and jazz and fried chicken and just everything that we are made up of as people. Culture is not created by the state. The state is the antithesis of culture. We make that up. We made jazz. We made these things. So that's not going away if the state falls on its ass. We're still America. We're still American. And that fuck you, that's why is still inside of us. It comes from our Scotch and Irish ancestors. Like, none of that went away. We're still there. And it doesn't disappear if the state does.
Even with the collapse, you think that America could stand strong if that kind of thing
Not as a
happened?
union.
What does that mean, though, to stand strong?
Well, when you're ripe for foreign invasion because of a major collapse in
Who is invading?
Right, we've had this conversation a few times actually on the show.
well,
Because if you say China, I'm about to point out that China has not invaded another country in hundreds of years.
I understand that.
They become
They
an
invade
economic
themselves all the time.
if they become an economic superpower, it's because we didn't compete. And if that's the way that it is, that's the way that it is. That's how the market works. We didn't compete. We were weak because our times were good, and it made us weak men. So we need hard times again to make us strong men. China, they had hard times. They have a strong ass thing going on because, you know, and they're going to take dominance. They're going to take economic dominance because the U.S. has fallen on its ass.
Well,
And that's fine.
I don't make the mistake of targeting one group when I see something like that happening. I mean, any country that is so weakened that it collapses and the government no longer has control or isn't maintaining. I mean, we've got a lot of folks out there that'd be like, you know what? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I'm just saying, you know, China, Russia, India, if we keep pissing them off, North Korea, everybody's like, hey, you know what? There's enough landmass over there. We can all take a little piece of the pie. Let's go have some fun. You know, whatever. I mean,
We're surrounded on two sides by vast oceans. We have
I
a
know.
huge.
I know.
For populace that
we're
is
huge.
we're
How
huge,
many
and we have a.
guns per American right now?
You hit it on the head. That's right what I
Yeah.
was going for. It is in our culture to have these guns. If you started paratrooping troops in from the sky, people would get on their roofs with coolers of beer and start picking them off for fun.
Listen. I understand that argument. I've heard it from John for the longest time.
God bless you, John. God bless you.
But I'm gonna say this right now. I never count out the wild card. You know what? I thoroughly didn't expect 9/11 to happen. I didn't see that. I was like, that's impossible to have happened, and it happened. For what? I'm not speculating on any source, cause, whatever. I'm just saying. So you can't count out the wild card. Who fucking ever expected Donald Trump might actually win, right? I mean, this was common, right? Most people were like, "There's just no way."
I think Trump thought he might win.
Right. I mean, it was just. But
He still thinks he won.
But you know what?
I know.
I don't know. It's like I don't count it out. You know, this is the.
I mean, that's the thing. Is like with the election. Like even if the election was rigged, he still lost. He's not the president right now. He lost. I mean, he lost, right?
But I think
whether it was rigged against him or not, he still lost.
I think Cam.
Right.
I think
Yeah, of
Cam.
course.
I think Cam is right. The union would not remain in the face of a collapse. Right, Cam?
What
And-
what are you from Florida, like Florida all your life?
30.
Or-
I've been in Florida going on 30. It's like 26, 27 years. But I grew up in the Midwest in Oklahoma.
There you go. Let me tell you something about the Deep South, because I was born and raised in Alabama. My entire life, I watched TV, I was on the internet, I was in all these different places, and everyone, states, senators, congressmen, they love talking shit about Alabama. I've known since I was very young that the government, the country, looked down on me because of where I was from. Me, Mississippi, Georgia somewhat, but less so. But they're like definitely Arkansas. Holy cow!
Right, like you were all snooty because you would wear shoes.
But yeah, but that's the
on
thing.
airs.
My whole life, I've known how much my state was hated, and so it's like, yeah, I would sing the national anthem and cry like any good American. And then I think you asked Jessica, but the question about loving the country, as it were, for millennials, is I was born the year before the Soviet Union collapsed. So, Cold War isn't in my memory. We got 20
Same.
minutes of it in school. Like, there was
Yeah.
almost nothing about that. 9/11 hit. We all got together. We were all very loving of the country. Everyone came together in that moment. But then we saw the Patriot Act. We saw what Edward Snowden put out. We saw what the NSA was doing. We saw the children starving in Yemen. We saw cholera coming back in Yemen. We saw all of these things that were done.
We saw
It's not that I
Waco.
hate the idea of America. I love the idea of America. But the fact is, there are millions of people who see that same flag and go, oh shit, I'm about to die. And so it's one of those things where I want to preserve America for what she was supposed to be. And if that's at the expense of the Union, I'm very happy to let the Union go by the wayside. Because even if you look at the founding documents, it was not supposed to be one nation. It was 13 small nations that came together, like the European Union does, and they
Right.
were working together to oust the bad guys. I don't see a compelling. I see history and why wars have happened, but I don't see why someone like me or like Jessica or John or you or anyone couldn't hope for a disconnect, for a divorce between California and Florida. Why we couldn't hope for that dissolution, but also to have, like, if China wants to come in, why can't Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, Florida come together and fight that?
Mhm.
Just because the union breaks apart doesn't mean that the people are gone. It doesn't mean the people who
Right.
loved the story of 1776 no longer exist.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the union, I think right now, like she talked about technology, the state is old technology. The Constitution, though well-intentioned, isn't a thing anymore. Not in the minds of those who wield it against us.
Well,
Well, that's
the
the thing,
argument.
right? It's entirely our fault. And when I say our, I mean like the people, the citizenry. It's entirely our fault that the Constitution doesn't mean anything. Because
I
we
don't think
haven't
that's
been the
true,
one.
actually.
We haven't been the
I
one to
will
step up and do something
I will
about it.
push back against that
Okay.
because they control academia. The elites control academia.
Yeah.
Right.
They control media. They control all of this stuff. They have been brainwashing us to what the Constitution is, how it works, the incorporation of the 14th Amendment, all of these things. They have told us how this thing works. They have not equipped us, which honestly, we never should have given them this role,
That's
period.
what I'm saying. Is it
But
their responsibility to do that, or is that your
it
father's
wasn't.
responsibility and his father's before him?
But
Whatever that responsibility to
we're
pass that
talking
down.
we're talking about people who made these decisions 100 years ago.
Right.
And so, yes, it's the people's fault, but the people have been the heirs of brainwashing. And so these people don't know how to stand up. They don't
Yeah.
know how the Constitution works. I can't blame someone who went to public school their whole life for not knowing how they should stand up to the government and how to make the Constitution work as it's supposed to.
Well,
They've never been taught how to.
well, but it's easy to say that, to make to make the argument that with an increase in population, it's a government is inherently going to become more authoritarian because there's more people that they need to control, as it were. Especially in a country this size with our growing population, moving on to 350 million people. I know it's not as big as some other countries in the world, but you look at the governance that they have, and it is much more authoritarian, right?
Yeah.
So when you have that, I mean, how do you say that we can counteract this inevitable need for that authority, that the people see the need for that through regulation, and then make the argument that the Constitution is old technology?
Well, here's the deal. So, yes, if you look at China, if you look at places with that big of a population, as ours is growing to those numbers, you do see a lot of jackbooted thugs. You see them telling them how many kids they can have because they need to be, like, they can say it's because of this, that, or the other, but they don't want them to outbreed. their power structure.
Right.
But let me tell you, Joe Biden and the people who are pushing for gun control measures are not smart people. When John said that they talked to historians and that Biden needed to go big, the only name in history that came to mind was Lincoln. And maybe that's black-pilled in some sense, but
I thought
Biden-
of FDR, honestly, and the New Deal.
Well, that's what
I thought about Lincoln because I think the moment, you're in Florida, how
Yeah.
many people do you personally know that if they said, hey, give up your guns, they would do it?
Why do you want to
Not
pretend that
one.
we do?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah,
Right.
not many, not that I can think of, because
that's the
people
thing.
who have the guns, won't want. So we're also kind of half blue, depending on where you are.
It was
Yeah.
a trick
Well, and
question,
there's
John.
some yellow
Yeah.
dogs too. But but that's the at the end of the day, regardless of how they've tried to brainwash us, there's still the fuck you that comes from being American. There's still the you're not going to touch my gun. You're not going to touch this, my property, whatever. That has still made its way through. So I think that regardless of what they try, once they start going more authoritarian, I don't hold a lot of hope for many people, but there are a lot of people, and they have a lot of guns, who are going to say no.
Mhm.
And those are the people that we need to say, hey, you should start saying no now because they're trying some shit.
Well, but the sheer irony of it to me is that, when I think about the Constitution and when it was written and the purposes behind it, then jump to the present day with the expanded population of this country, I don't think the Constitution was designed to. It needs to be 50 small country states,
Countries.
not one
Yeah.
country
At
that's
least.
governed by the same
Yeah.
Constitution. Each state needs to have their constitution. I know California's would be totally different than Florida's, but
course,
we
yeah,
can't.
absolutely.
The idea that Constitution speaks for everyone in the United States begins to be contentious.
It was
Well-
conceived. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say it was conceived as a coup anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah, right. It was not designed to do that. It was designed to go around that idea. And the original inception of our country was to have 50 individual, well, not 50 at the time. There weren't that many, but
Right.
13
Right.
individual countries that had trade with each other, and could benefit from, like common trade deals and stuff like that. Nothing like the federalist leviathan of government that we have now. So
Right.
secession is a completely logical and
Mhm.
non-violent solution. Of course,
Yep.
there are no perfect solutions, only trade-offs. But in this is a way to do that without murdering each other. It's
Right.
like being forced to stay in a marriage that you're no longer in, like an
An
abusive
abusive
marriage.
one at
Right.
that, yeah.
But
Abusive
see-
marriage.
But see the entire document, I understand that it was set up that the government was no more than an umpire if there was a foul in the game between the states, right? That's all
Yeah.
the government was supposed to be, an
Yeah.
umpire that said, no, this is what the Constitution says and you will abide by the Constitution. You're right, you're wrong. Blah.
Well,
And to a
it
certain
was-
extent, right? Protect
Well, I mean,
the
the
rights.
Constitution was the states creating the federal government.
Right.
So the Constitution was meant purely to give it specific enumerated powers
Right.
and to constrain it. That was the concept that was bigger than the concept that a lot of people wanted. They didn't want that at all because they
Yeah.
It
knew
didn't work.
that it would end up being consolidated power. And like I said before, the 14th Amendment and incorporation doctrine after that was put through, it's been killing us ever since.
Well, I mean, but the document itself gave the power to make changes make amendments to the document to help it evolve as needed, and I understand the intent of that. However, what happened was the first moment that they said, okay, instead of just, calling the play on these situations, let's put a law in place so that this situation doesn't occur again, and then we can just say, we don't have to like look at it again. We can just say, okay, you broke this law. And everybody was like, okay, yeah, you can put that little law into place. That's fine. Be a little preemptive. And then that is the moment that you start to erode, and you in any way, shape, or form, the Constitution, and it was a self-defeating document in
Absolutely.
the way it was built.
Didn't work.
When you look at the present day and population and governance,
But let me ask you. This is a fun question. Who was the first president that ignored the Constitution?
That's a good one.
ooh, now see that's not fair because I don't know.
George Washington.
I would say George
First
Washington.
The
Yeah,
first
guy.
one.
yeah.
The thing failed within 8 years because of the Whiskey Rebellion, because of the
Mhm.
federal government trying to
Brought
do
this up
more
so
than the
many times.
Constitution allowed. And
Yeah.
since that, it's only been worse. And
Right.
so I would say that, well, it's like, have you ever read Lysander Spooner?
No.
Because he was, when was he, in the 1800s? He had his own post office, even though it was apparently against the law, and he did better than the United States Postal Service.
Mhm.
But he had said that either the Constitution either enables or has created the Leviathan that we have now. So it either failed or it was made to do this.
Right.
And I cannot argue with him because it
Time to throw it
failed
away.
within the first 8 years.
Right. Because
Well, I think it was based off the idea of the shackled Leviathan, which I can't remember who it was that said that, who coined that phrase, but I love that term when talking about government and constraining government. That shackled Leviathan.
right.
We're supposed to be like, we can control the beast, it'll be okay. And then it shakes
So,
loose of its shackles.
I think the
And
founders knew.
That what Leviathans do. Go
I
ahead.
think the founders knew that this would be the result. And
Alexander Hamilton did.
they knew that they were not going to be in the future governed by people who were even half-wits. That it was
Yeah.
completely possible that very terrible people, just like Donald Trump, would be able to come into power because they were popular. And so the idea was that, you would have the separation of powers so that if someone like that did find themselves in that position, that they couldn't just like ruin the entire system. And so like I think there was some knowledge of that, but each sort of like couple of generations we build upon the ideas that were left by our predecessors. I'm not saying what the founding fathers left us can be totally scrapped and wasn't useful at all. It was built on that experiment of ideas by John Locke, who had come before them in the 1600s. The Great Reformation in England that attempted to set up a constitutional government. Now, the American Revolution had some success, probably more success at freedom for people than ever had been seen on the planet before. But this can't be our constraint. Our imagination cannot be constrained by the Constitution or what is, because obviously that's not going all the way. So we have to be willing to take it that extra step further. And no one the government is not going to give up power because it thinks it's the right thing to do.
Right.
It has to be taken from them.
Or
You're
because
never
it's
going to
popular, even.
appeal. You're never going to appeal to your oppressors to quit oppressing you. That's not going to work. You have to,
Right.
subvert. You have to subvert
Well,
You gotta shoot redcoats.
and
Right.
shoot
That's right.
redcoats.
Water the tree, as they say. Yeah.
well,
Water the tree.
So is there any? I mean, do you see it as conceivable to save the Constitution, or the Constitution being in any way a way to save us from ourselves in this situation?
I don't think so in the way of the 50 states. I could see a few, like, I think that in the very least we need to split up into 3 countries. In the very least, we need 3.
Please. Yeah.
And I think that at least one of those could take the lessons learned from the Constitution and some of the original intent of the Constitution and do something good with it. But I do not see an end point in the future where all 50 states are together. And for me, that's a point of hope, because I'm tired of California deciding stuff for me. I'm tired of the Andrew Cuomo's being celebrated. Gavin Newsom, oh boy, I'd like to see him tarred and feathered. I don't want these people deciding things in my life. And so the dissolution of the union as it stands is a massive point of hope for me and what I would want to see. It's not like, oh, well, if it happens, that would be acceptable. That is the desirable outcome for me.
On the
Well,
money.
let me ask you how uh, everything that's going on with race right now, right? I mean, this is it's so big. I mean, you can't ignore that elephant in the room,
Most
right?
of it's the media
And I
and
understand.
academia.
It's
I
mostly
un-
manufactured.
I
Yeah.
under I understand that,
Absolutely.
but this is also that coordinated effort to stoke our tribalism, right? And really push that agenda. You know, when, how does tribalism play into the end game with this? In coming to some, you know,
Well,
in a unified place.
I believe in freedom of association. So if the Hoteps want to have a primarily black state or whatever within the borders of what is now the United States, I don't have a problem with that. I don't
We
have a
need
problem with people deciding to do other things. That's fine. That's good. I'd love to see it. But right now, it's hard to talk about race without talking about how the media does it. It's hard to talk about it without talking about how academia really pushes these horrible theories that split us up and make us different and the other from each other.
Right. Well, this is an argument I've made with John. I've decided that we're dealing with two things right now. Like, there is the inherent tribalism, and you can call it racism if you want, that we have as humans, right? I see somebody that looks different than me, and I recognize that they're different than me. That's tribalism. We do that as people, but we have
Yeah.
competitive racism, where this race, we've got to recognize the superior qualities of this race, or put them on a pedestal, or and but they're playing on our tribalism, our inherent tribal nature, to make that bad, right? Like, even the
yeah.
things we can't control are being turned into bad racism.
if I may,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. What if some of this tribalism isn't necessarily a bad thing? What if we have to
Jessica
start
and I
looking
are on the same page.
on the same
'cause I
page?
was
I'm,
just
I'm
about
so
to
glad.
talk about that. Go
So
ahead.
we need a little bit. We all talk about how we have to have this like ideological conformity with each other, where we all agree on what reality is. And I say, why do we need to do that? We're just fighting with each other to come to this consensus about how we see the world, when that's completely unnecessary. We can have separation of ideology. We can go off into our separate groups and live how we want to live, not forcing each other into this conformity, which isn't real in the first place. We all have to
Yeah.
be Americans, and as Americans, agree on what we're all going to
association.
do. Forced association of 350 million people?
Right.
It's
Right.
insanity.
Yeah.
Every
We're not
Bill
meant
Burr
to.
said it. Bill Burr said every
Yeah.
100 miles or so there's a river or a mountain or a valley, because people are different, and they put
Yeah.
God put separations up,
Well, and I have to say that while it's a hot button issue right now, I have to point to the Asian community when I look at the positive effects of tribalism. So, like, almost any town you go into, there's an Asian part of town, like in cities, right? Almost, there's an Asian district. It's an area where the
Rooftop
Asians,
Koreans.
right? They very
live
much.
streams here.
Asian communities often segregate themselves, self-segregation, because they are tribal in that way, and their culture, etc. But they're Asians as a whole, they're pretty prosperous because of their they're industrious as well, and it's
They're heavy
they're
influence on family, especially.
and it's
Well,
right, a
that's
lot of
Huge
family.
reason why.
And that's what I was going to say. Tribalism, by its very nature, is not a bad thing.
Right.
That is a thing that people
Right.
would not want you to say. But a tribe is a family. It's descendants of a united pair that grew into a bigger thing.
And
That's what
sometimes,
tribes are.
and sometimes the unifying factor in that is race, right? I mean, we
Sometimes,
we
yeah.
can't deny that.
Or
That
ideology.
right, or
Yeah.
ideology.
More,
Culture
more than that,
is a big one.
I was about to say culture also tends to fall along like where you live in the world, and your race is only determined by your ancestors' proximity to the equator. So
Mhm.
really what we're talking about is culture. Culture is
Yeah.
different in Africa than it is in Sweden because the environment is different. And so the
Right.
types of things people needed to do to survive and the group integration they needed to form is just different. And that's where cultures come from. It doesn't, superiority when you get us all into a melting pot is based on a matter of perspective because, maybe some communities are poorer than others, but they have more family connection. They have more fun. They have, so there's there are
Right.
no perfect solutions. There's only trade-offs. So we have to let each group be free to find its own destiny that may not fit into what we consider the good life.
Right.
Have you ever heard? I think it was Thomas Sowell or Sowell. I'm not sure how
Love
you say it.
him.
Thomas
I think
Sowell.
it's Soul.
Soul.
Who
I think
Yeah.
it's Soul,
who
yeah.
who talked about the constrained versus unconstrained vision of humanity. Have you ever heard of this concept?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
On the left, primarily, there's this concept of utopian progress,
Right.
that
Mm.
man can get to this specific point, and it is that melting pot talk. It is that total agreement among everyone. They think that people can get that way. And then there's the constrained view that says that's not how humans work. You cannot change man in that way.
They believe in social engineering, especially.
Exactly.
Making
Yeah.
the better socialist man. They will create
Oh
a
my
better
God.
man. Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Ubermensch, perhaps.
Here's the thing. I have my first best friend in my life was a black guy.
Mhm.
I grew up in Alabama. People make it out to be the most racist place on the planet. I didn't hear anyone use the N-word until I was like 22 and in Wisconsin, of all places. So it's
Yeah.
like there's a lot of BS that goes on. There are a lot of
Oh,
people
yeah.
who can get together and agree and be kind to each other. But there's this idea that if you want to be around your family, you can call it a tribe. If you want to be around your family, that's a bad thing. And
Right.
that's nonsense.
Right.
We don't have to like each other. We just have to not kill and hurt each other.
Right.
You want to know what works better at getting people to get along than laws is
Greed.
markets. Greed and markets. Yeah. So when we can benefit each other through markets, you don't have to believe anything I believe. If you've got something I need that you have that we can exchange gold coins or whatever it might be,
Right.
then it doesn't matter how much we believe like one another.
I'm
Doesn't
sorry.
even matter that you're racist.
I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry, ma'am, but the media tells me I have to not buy your stuff because you're white. I
Turn
need to
it
support
off.
black-owned businesses.
That's
All
right.
of
I
it comes
can't,
down
ma'am, I
to the
can't.
media.
That's
You
my
can.
job. That's
It's
my
a button.
that's my
Oh, we're
job
supposed to
on
get
this
the next
show.
software update.
That's my job on this show. Sorry, I can't do. Ma'am, what are you
Sure,
talking
but
about?
at least you recognize that if you
Yes,
did
yeah,
turn
yeah.
it off and you went outside
Right.
and planted tomatoes instead of watching CNN or
Speaking
whatever,
of,
I don't know
actually-
whatever it is you watch, but yeah. So that's my constant, like the drum that I beat constantly is like, oh well, if the government shuts down, we'll be deprived of lots of things. Yes, that's right, you will. And so maybe you should act accordingly. Maybe you should buy some land, cultivate self-sufficiency. Like don't take this idea and say, oh whoa, everything is bad. It's like, I know what I have to do to prepare for this. I have the histories that have been laid out before me, and I'm smart enough to have read them, and I know what's coming, so I can get out of the way.
Well,
and
yeah, and I can understand that. For me, like I take a look at this Georgia situation that's gone on with the massage parlors, where tribalism is being used as a weapon against this kid because in my opinion, I think he did have some pretty good mental situations going on there, and he happened to
Probably
freak.
a burner from the FBI in his back pocket. But let's
Right.
talk about that.
But anyway, he if he frequented these places, right? I mean, it's not like if that's where he's going to go shoot up to assuage his Christian guilt over visiting these places. Guess what? If you shoot the employees, there's a 99% chance you're going to hit an Asian because it's an Asian massage parlor. And it doesn't, but they spin it that it was a racially motivated attack using that inherent tribalism of the Asian community as a weapon against him, potentially. Right? Like,
They use it
who knows?
They use it against all of us. They use our preferences against us. Like, you don't have to be racist to be like, you know what, I think I like white girls the best. There's nothing racist about that. That's just a preference. But
Yeah.
they would tell you, or for God's sake, what if a man wants to have children who look like him? Like, now that's racist.
Insanity.
Right.
How
Oh,
dare you.
But it
I don't want to have be married to a woman who used to be a man. You're transphobic.
Right.
Right.
They're using our very natures
Sure.
against us, and it's
and
like
there's no way to win, because if you date a black woman, you're a colonizer, and if you don't
Right.
date a black woman, you're
You're
racist.
Right.
You're
Right.
fetishizing your
Right.
blackness or whatever.
Right. Right.
Right.
Sorry to have
Yeah.
interrupted you, Cam. I'm sorry.
See?
Yeah, well, I mean,
No, I was
that's the thing, though. It's entirely designed so that you can't win. It's using your good nature and the fact that you don't want to, naturally, as a person, you don't want people to be mad at you. You want people to like you because you want to be part of whatever tribe or group they're in.
Right.
You know, it's a biological function that you want people to like you.
Well,
And
see,
so by
it's-
them being,
yeah.
okay, there's no way that we won't like you. Well, we're not going to like you no matter what. So the only thing you can do is gruff, and that's it.
Well, it's like Michael Malice. He talks about how he likes to figure people out by making a joke that's pretty horrible and see how they react. But he was talking about one time he went to a dinner and everyone at the table was an immigrant from a different place. And so he asked the question, okay, so who do you hate in your country? And everyone was like, oh, we don't hate anyone. And he says, no, okay, so who's bordering you? And it's like, Czechoslovakia. Screw the Czechoslovakians. It doesn't, not even necessarily a race thing.
Right.
Anyone who's directly connected to you, a lot of times you hate. And
Although,
I
to be
think
fair,
that
in
if you look at
region,
America,
could be- could be
if you
a
look at
thing.
America, it's the South and the North. They
Yeah.
hate us, we hate them. It's just a bigger landmass.
and
than
then
some
the
other
West,
places.
and then the West Coast, right? Like everybody on the
West
East Coast is like,
hates-
well,
well, the
those
West Coast
fucking
hates
nuts
the
on the West,
Midwest, right?
right?
West Coast hates the Midwest. They call them flyover states, you know, and all that kind of.
So
Well-
I
Yeah.
believe this is still the Catholics and the Protestants being
There is-
worked out in our landscape and our culture now.
There is a lot
There
of
seem to
that,
be a lot
yes.
of the values and stuff that do derive from one of those two, right?
And
I
it's
mean,
like the Irish troubles writ large in
Mhm.
our culture, and that's coming to a head. You know, how long before we see a car bomb? Not
But
long.
but now all of these things, though, you know, even like the case in Georgia, it circles me back to the black pill onslaught, where I'm like, okay, I can't help that guy. Like the machine is about to roll over this guy and destroy him, destroy his future. I understand he went and he killed people, but if he's just fucked in the head by us, you know. I mean, come on. We have a society that can easily fuck somebody in the head. I'm just sorry, Disney, but you know, when it's all said and done, you know, you can't. Now it's like I gotta ignore what's
He needs to
happening to
be-
people
He
and
needs to
beat
be
my own thing.
segregated from society so he can't hurt other people. And right
I-
now we don't have good systems for that,
Here's-
but he has to be separated from people.
But the reasoning
Here's-
behind it is going to be atrocious for him. That's
I
going to
know.
make it worse.
Well, I mean, Dylan Roof, like the people act like he got, the, 5-star treatment when he was taken down, but I think he got death penalties in every state, in the state and nationally. But the black pill is, I think it hinges on this belief that you can affect the globe or the whole country, when the white pill is, if I can get through, I've broken people out of the matrix. I've broken one person here, another person there, and those numbers, if my friend Susanna, who went from a neocon to an anarchist, changes the mind of one other person, that's a family tree of pushing off the nonsense that we're in. And so a lot of people, well, what's the old statement? I know you know it, Jessica. It's think globally, act locally.
Yeah. It's an environmental thing.
Yeah.
But
It is.
let's talk about that in the
It's
case of the
effective.
black versus the white pill.
Yeah.
I have to think locally. Right now, that has a lot to do with my family, and then people around me. We have some listeners. I don't know how many. can't tell you a strict number of that. But
Some.
if 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 two of them change their mind about something, if two of them decide, you know what, CNN is full of shit. Sorry, Disney. Um, Disney's full of pedophiles. I don't know. But if you're able to change the mind of 1, 2, 4, 7, 12 people, you got to think in that local context, because if you
Right.
can change your house, then change your neighborhood, change your town, change your city, that goes a lot farther than being black-pilled because you can't change the world.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
I think that that's the starting place.
Well, the question becomes, how devious will they get to make sure that they keep feeding that black pill out there?
As devious as they can.
Right.
They'll do everything past your imagination.
There's going to be so
even.
much. Now we're in the day of age of sleight of hand. So it's it's here. Let me look at this. Look at this. Look at this. And then they're doing this. All right, and it's like, what is actually going on?
So Cam and I work pretty hard at not taking ourselves too seriously. And I think that has a lot to do with why we aren't getting black pilled. Because like you can sort of take a spectator's look at things and say, I'm in this world, I'm not of this world.
Some of this stuff is funny.
Some of it's really
yeah.
absurd and hilarious when you think about it. And yeah, they're always gonna, they're always gonna do shit that you can't stop that. Even as much as we all sit around here talking about what interventions we might try or what fantasy world we might wish to live in, that's not gonna stop the ever rolling death machine that is the state. But they want us demoralized. They want us to believe that it will never be anything but that. And historically and statistically, it's simply not true. They're on a clock just like every other empire before them was on a clock. And you know who survived all of that? The people. They continued, they went on, even after the fall of Rome. We call that the Dark Ages, but at the same time, that was a halcyon period of freedom for a great many peoples. And I think the expansion of Christianity throughout Europe has a lot to do with that. Others might disagree. But Jesus sort of became the emperor of Europe after the Empire of Rome fell. And the world changed. The Christians, the text of the Bible, that was a humanitarian text for that time. In the light of the Roman Empire, that was a crazy social revolution. And it took over the world. No one in Rome would have thought that could happen, sitting in the massive wealth of the empire that expanded from one end of the globe to the other. They never would have thought that possible. And here we are sitting on the capital wealth and relative peace and harmony that revolution brought. So to say that couldn't happen, it will. It's statistically impossible for it not to happen. It's our destiny. So
and not to mention the fact that a lot of people want to go out and change the world, and I'm not a big Jordan Peterson guy. I don't think I've listened to much of what he said or read what he said, but he did give a good piece of advice, and it actually in some sense mirrors that old misattributed quote to St. Francis of Assisi, which is go out into the world and preach the gospel. When necessary, use words. But sometimes the first step isn't, you can't change the whole world. You want to, but if you don't start by making your bed, if you don't start by brushing your teeth, if you don't start by making your life better, you cannot make anyone else's life better.
Right.
You cannot change the world until you've been able to change you. And so I think that if you don't start from that place, from that humble place of, I'm not everyone's savior, I can only do what's best for me, and then move on from there and lead by example, I think that you're inevitably going to be blackpilled. But making that choice, I think, is the first step to actually change the world.
Can I read to you guys a quote that comes from the Talmud?
Oh, hell no.
It says, do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it.
I like that. Yeah, it's very inspiring.
Jessica and I are just a team at this point.
How dare
Yeah,
how
you guys planned this, didn't you?
how dare you try and chicken soup for the soul me? I'm just
It is very
How-
Anarchist.
how dare you? Well, look, okay, so I'll say that you gave me a little gave me a little light at the end of the tunnel with that whole go in and get my property, and maybe that's okay. I get that.
Microdose those white pills, buddy.
Now,
That's the way.
now, at some other time, we can discuss the other enemy of the people, and that is the corporatocracy, and how we keep that from replacing the government, because that is a very real threat, I think, on the horizon that could be sold under the guise of, we can save you from the government.
They rely
Fascism.
on the government. They rely entirely on the state.
For now.
Without them, for now. But
Right.
Google took $9 billion in subsidies from the state.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't be what they are without the rest of it. So it's
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
self-perpetuating. It all relies on each other.
Hey,
Self-recursive programming.
Hold on. I'm just going to say this. From a corporate standpoint, if you walk up to a barrel and there's a hole in the barrel and wine is spewing out, you stick a fucking cup under it and just take the goddamn wine, because it's just leaking out. So, I mean, it's I wouldn't I won't
wine, but
I won't argue that they're beholden to the government so much as they're just like, hey, grab a cup. Why not? The kegger's on. The kegger's on.
I'm going to take my chicken stimmies just like everybody else is. So.
Chicken stimmies. Oh my God. Oh.
So that's a
horrible.
conversation for another day. I mean, there's so many enemies lurking in the tall grass that we, it's like, do
Don't
we
get
have the
that-
lawnmower? Do we have the lawnmower?
Don't get that 100-yard stare, man. Don't give them the victory that they have not won yet. They did not win. Don't act as though they have.
Well, I hope to have that 100-yard stare here shortly, where it's actually just me trying to see the back end of my property. So
There you go, yeah.
I can't see through all these trees, but I got a clear line of sight on that deer.
This is the way.
All right, so before we get out of here, and my apologies to the chat, I've seen Wyatt, I've seen Elephant Man, I've seen Ron Helton, I've seen Jay Edgar, I've
Yeah,
even
seen all you guys.
seen some fat
Hi,
go in there.
guys. I know all those people.
We're always horrible when we have guests, where we
we're-
we tend to, because we really want to get in there and chew the meat off the bone, as it were. No offense to any chicken lovers out there. You got to be careful with what you say.
I will eat every damn chicken in this place.
I don't promote the killing of chickens. I don't promote the killing of chickens, but I do like the stock. I'm not an investor.
I like the story. Yes.
Chickens come directly from dinosaurs and are therefore evil, so it's okay to eat them.
All
They
birds,
did-
Oh, yeah.
all birds are evil.
They
All
don't
birds
come.
are evil.
They don't come.
Sure.
Don't come directly from dinosaurs. FedEx handed it off to the USPS to make the final delivery. I'm just saying. But anyway,
Very
so
nice.
we're going to get the hell out of here. But before we do that, so why don't you guys tell us a little bit about, tell us about the show that you guys have got going on and what you got coming up.
I'm repping the merch right here.
Oh,
We make t-shirts.
the mad ones. The
I like it,
mad
yeah.
ones.
It comes from a. Do you know who Jack Kerouac is? An old beat poet. It comes from a little bit of his book On the Road that I heard, only that, and haven't read the whole book. That I heard when I was in my late teens, which the poem is, the only people for me are the mad ones, the ones who were mad to live, mad to talk, mad to be saved, desirous of everything at the same time, the ones who never yawn or say a commonplace thing, but burn, burn, burn like fabulous yellow Roman candles exploding like spiders across the stars. And that's what we do. What we do is we realize that when we're talking to the normie, the regular person, the blue pilled, we're crazy in their eyes.
Oh yeah.
But if you actually peel back the layers, we're passionate. We believe in something. We chase after something. We do believe we're right, but we're not crazy. But I'm happy to lean into the crazy if that means a few people go, let's listen to these crazy people, and then they hear a cogent thought that makes them change their mind. That would make me happy. So our show is called The Mad Ones. We do it every Wednesday at 10 p.m. because I have a bunch of children and I need to make sure that they're all asleep and leaving me alone when we do it. But we bring in people that we like. We bring in people like we did this last week, Thaddeus Russell, who bucked the entire historical narrative of America. On April 7th, we're going to be talking to Scott Horton. I don't know if you know Scott Horton, but he's
Big
like the
anti-war guy.
encyclopedia. He's like the Encyclopedia Brown of the anti-war movement. We have a lot of good people. Next week is Nicole Sauce, who does a show called Living Free in Tennessee, which is
You should watch that
about
because you're homesteading.
which is about
Yeah.
taking freedom into your own hands. And so we do that every week at 10 p.m. We have random special episodes. But if you want to find us, the easiest way, I think you should watch the video. So youtube.com/themadOnes is the place to go for that. We're on every podcatcher. We have a website where you can listen to it. wearethemadOnes.com. We have shirts, as you can see on Jessica here, that I've made. I like to think that I'm good at making pictures and pretty videos.
I like it.
But
I
we'll
like the
see.
shirt. Nice shirt. Yeah.
But if you want to hear me say bad words, like I do every day, I really like the C word. You can find me on Twitter at Cam Harless. She's at Soup Canarchist, which is a secret dick joke. And I think well, we do have a community on Locals, the madones.locals.com. But yeah, we are trying to talk to people that are interesting, to people who don't consult 3x5 cards when they talk about reality or what they've been taught. And we try to have fun, because I think fun and hope are in short supply these days. And if we can give you just the tiniest bit of it, that's why we're there.
Whatever, Boomer.
on.
You quote dead people, okay? So
I do
that's
wanna
a
say
boomer
one thing
move.
That's an
I do wanna
excellent
say
shirt
one
idea
thing.
right there. I quote dead people. Anyway.
I do think that's what's funny is your name is Generation Gap. You're X, he's Millennial. And
Right.
I think that probably one of the best things in the last year or two has been the phrase "Okay Boomer," because "Okay Boomer" is a phrase that Generation Z said to Generation X, and the Boomers got pissed off at the Millennials. So it's just
It's
perfect.
true. It's very true.
We're to blame for everything.
Like I said, we just try and keep our heads low. It's like, whatever. Y'all have fun, right?
Yeah.
All right.
So
Well,
you're.
yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say you're from Generation X. You might remember Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country.
Yeah, it's not that long ago. What you don't?
Well,
Come on.
some of the millennials might not remember that movie, but Spock tells Kirk. So in Undiscovered Country, the Undiscovered Country is them trying to make peace relations with the Klingons, and there's heavy themes of like race and turmoil, civil unrest.
Oh yeah.
Humans and Klingons do not get along, so Kirk has to go to the Klingon homeworld and stand trial. And it's like, these people aren't going to listen to him. They're going to execute him right away. And Spock tells him, you know, some people might strain to hear the sound of a whisper through all of the screaming. And I think that that's true. I think people are straining to hear the sound of a whisper right now. And everybody is screaming, but there are those people just begging for that whisper, for that sense, that piece of that little bit of peace that you can offer them. So if you can do that for anybody, that alone is a white pill.
Oh my God. Okay, Boomer. Quoting Star Trek, live
It's more
long
like, okay,
and
hippie.
prosper. Oh my God.
Nimoy was the man. Leonard Nimoy was the man. Check out his photography. He was awesome.
Oh my God. How do I say social justice in Klingon? Oh my God. Oh, that's right. It doesn't exist. It's toxic masculinity. All right. John, now that we know where to find these fine folks, can you tell these people where they can find us less than fine folks?
Yes, absolutely. In our description, we have all of our links. We've got our Twitter, which is at the GenGapP. We got our Discord server. So if you like us and you want to talk to us, you want to talk to the people who like us, that's a great place to do it. We're also over on Gilded with the other Freedom Scoop people. So you can go check us out over there if you prefer Gilded. And we've got our subscribe star. So if you have a passing affection for us and you feel like handing us some money, it's a good way to do it. And you also get a perk depending on your tier level or however it works. Um, so you get whatever kind of perks come with however much you give, and it's a great way to support the show and make sure we can keep doing this 3 times a week. Um, and yeah, we will see you guys next time.
Wait, did we lose somebody?
We lost-
We
We
lost
did,
somebody.
last game.
We
He-
lost Cam.
Damn it, He's
He was sick of
mad.
us.
He's mad at me. I know he is.
No.
You
Yeah.
know it is.
He is.
And
He
he's gonna.
hates you, Robert.
I have
He
white
hates you.
guilt. I have white
The-
guilt.
Only person I've ever seen Cam get mad at is like ATF agents.
Well, that makes
Like,
sense.
You're fine, believe me.
All right. So we appreciate everybody showing up tonight, talking in chat, and everybody that's been on the show this evening. This is the kind of conversations we need to be having. Is these ideas, and how do we fight the narrative? How do we fight with our own counter narrative? How do we get away from it all and just relax, right? 'Cause
Yep,
that's
right.
it's in short supply these days. Relaxing, right? But we're going to be coming back again on Monday night. Hopefully, we'll bring you a little bit of laughter or just a smile to start your week off with Fill in the Gap at 9:30 p.m. We'll also be back next Wednesday for a rousing episode of Shooting the Shit at 9:30 p.m. And then, of course, a week from now, we'll be back with our regular episode at 8:30 p.m. on Fridays. All of those times are the Eastern time zone, not to be confused with the other posers that are out there. You know who you are. Jessica, I believe you're one of those posers.
She's in
thing.
Georgia.
Oh wait, that's right. You
in
are,
Georgia.
aren't
How dare
you?
you?
Oh, excuse
How dare
me.
you, Robert?
I don't know why.
She's one of us. She's on our side.
I'm in the rural.
Say
Rural.
the rural juror.
Rural.
The rural juror.
No,
30,
I'm a
30 Rockwood.
homestead and housewife out in the
That's
sticks,
right.
man.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's right. I always confuse you
Yeah,
with
yeah.
some other commie pinkos I know. So
I am reading Emma Goldman, so
Oh,
I'm
you're-
basically a
Yeah.
communist.
Basically, yeah.
But thanks for all your support and love, folks. Hit the like button on your way out if you haven't already, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't. We're going to get the hell out of here. We'll see you again next time. Thanks a lot, Jessica. Thanks, Cam, even though I don't know where the hell you went.
Dude,
Yeah.
crash.
but-
Is that what happened? Well, tell him we said thanks for showing up.
I
Yeah,
will.
thanks
All
for
right.
putting up with us.
Peace. All right, everybody. Have a good night. Peace out.
Yeah, see you guys.
The war will begin.